All right, so I believe we're live on YouTube now. We're going to sit here and wait until 8 a.m. to give folks a little bit of time to
Sure.
connect up, get ready, and join up. So if you've been waiting and you're tuning in, thanks for coming. And Iury and I are going to be talking here about Bifrost for a little bit. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes. Like I said, we need to have it hit 8 before we actually get this started too much. So where are you physically at right now, Iury, these days?
I'm in Brazil.
Nice.
Moved back from Czech Republic to here.
See, I'm far. I'm like very very North America, and you're like South.
Yeah, totally. And for you, it's like 8 a.m., right?
Yeah, I mean it's 8 a.m. is when we're going live here. I'm in Pacific time. I don't know what your zone is.
Yeah, mine it's like the Brazilian time. It's GMT minus 3, so I'm like 5 hours ahead of you.
It's
Because for me,
3
it's
a.m.
like no, one p.m. here.
Okay.
Lunchtime, basically.
Oh, you're like 2 time zones east of EST. I
Yeah.
understand. Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. That actually explains everything about our timing when we're trying to coordinate upstream about what works and what doesn't. But we'll get started. This is open source office hours. If you're tuned in, you almost certainly know I'm Jay. I'm currently PTL of Ironic and on the technical committee. And as always, I just like to give a shout out to G Research, who's my employer. I appreciate that they give me the opportunity to come do these. For you a couple times a week, at least when I don't have COVID. I'm glad to be back. Don't have COVID, so that's enjoyable. If you missed it, I apologize for that. And I'd like to thank Iury for joining us here today. Iury is a former Ironic PTL. He's been around the block, done a lot of good stuff with Ironic, knows more about Bifrost than I could ever know. And I'd like to thank him for giving us an hour of time here. So what are you going to be showing us here today, Iury?
Hey Jay, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So basically, I'll try to do a small demo with Bifrost. I already have a setup with Bifrost installed. So I will just show it how you can easily set up in any machines that you have. Mostly I'm using virtual machines, but you can easily use Bifrost with any hardware that you have available in your lab and data center, etc. So let me try to share my screen here.
All right. Well, while you're getting that up, can you just tell me about like why would someone want to use Bifrost with Ironic instead of like a full stack open stack installation?
So the use case when we come up with Bifrost, like upstream, I wasn't part of the Iron community at the time, of course, but mostly it's the standalone use case scenario where you don't want all the OpenStack components installed in your data center, and you just need to provide bare metal machines for your end users. So why not just use Ionic standalone? So Bifrost came in. It's a set of playbooks in the low level that automates the deployment for bare metal nodes and you can provide to your end user basically. And it has integration with some OpenStack service, of course. Uh, Mostly only for now, we have only support for Keystone. So if you want to integrate with a Keystone that you have in your cloud, it's completely fine to use it. And that is also the integration with Iron Prometheus Exporter. There is a new project that was created like 3 years ago or something in the Iron community, if I recall. There is no support for Neutron. Probably someone was going to ask, hey, I want to use Neutron together with Bifrost. At the moment, it's not possible, but contributions are already welcome, and the community would be really happy to see this happen.
So like even though like we colloquially like downstream call it Ironic standalone, it's not really standalone. It's just trying to come up with like a slimmer profile for an OpenStack cluster that kind of is targeted to a specific set of needs.
Yeah, exactly. Like not it would be standalone like if you only really want to have Ionic installed. And in the past it would be like maybe a security issue because in the past we only have like two type of authentications supported in Ironic. That would be the no auth and using keystone. And by default, Bifrost, it was in the beginning, it was only no auth. So it wasn't really, I think, that you would probably want to use in production, you know. But when we start adding support, now it supports three type of authentications. HTTP basic, like you can create your user in the HTTP server and you will be able to interact with it, and keystone and no auth, but don't use in production, of course, if you want.
All right. So, what sort of demo do you have set up for us today? You said that you were using virtual machines, and while you're getting the share set up, I can speak something about that because I think that's one of the coolest technologies of Ironic that people don't get a lot of chance to talk to because it's not really exposed to end users. But Ironic has a whole suite of continuous integration utilities that sort of present the same interface on one side that a hardware BMC would. Anything from even an even an SNMP controlled PDU through virtual PDU to IPMI via things like virtual BMC to fake redfish profiles
Yeah,
via something
exactly.
like sushi tools. So when you see this and you see this operating against virtual machines, we're interacting with those virtual machines in the exact same way as if they were physical hardware. And one of the nice things is if you're already using Ironic in any form against that hardware, because Bifrost is using the same mechanisms to talk to the systems, it'll be able to work there. So that's exciting. Ignore the fact we're dealing with VMs here. Ironic can almost certainly speak the language of your hardware in real life.
Yeah, that's true. So just checking, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great. Thank you. It's very visible on
Okay,
the
the
screen
size is
as well.
okay? Okay, cool. So basically, this first machine, I just have set up a new Ironic deployed with Bifrost. It's a small Nook that I have from in the lab. And basically, I already have things installed here. But what I would like to show you is that I will be able to deploy two virtual bare metals here, and it will probably take some time. So I will kick off a few things here. Uh, in Bifrost, normally you would be running playbooks, but since I'm a bit lazy, we have a cool thing that it was created by Dimitri. It's the Bifrost CLI. So mostly here in the Bifrost CLI, uh, these are the options that you have. You can prepare a virtual testing environment and install Ironic, enroll bare metal nodes, and deploy them. These first three steps I've already did, so we will start with the deploy because it will take some time, and then I will start explaining a few things of each step, why they are necessary, what are necessary for you to have Ironic installed in your machine.
So Ironic is actually going to be installing an operating system on these virtual bare metal machines live while we're talking here.
No, Ironic is already running. Let me.
But Ironic's going to install an operating system on our two test nodes live.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah.
And if I recall, let me just, if I need to create the SSH key. Okay, so basically what you can do if you are a lazy person like me, you can have Bifrost CLI and then deploy. The first parameter that you would have to put here, it's the inventory file that it's already generated when you are on the previous steps.
So inventory, that's like an Ansible inventory.
Yeah, exactly. Here it's a JSON file that it's already bare metal inventory JSON, and then extra variable that I'll need to pass. It's the install information to access Ironic and so on, so the credentials can be correctly passed down the path when using the Bifrost CLI. JSON. Then I'll show you how it looks like each one of these files. If you can see, like there is an option --wait that we can use to wait for the deployment to be finished. So for now, I will just edit so we don't have to spend a lot of time seeing a lot of things running, or we would like to see what is happening down the path.
So waiting for the deployment to finish, does that mean that this command is not going to return until there's an operating system installed on the servers and they're in active state, they're done? Okay. So it's not just waiting for it to kick it off. It's actually waiting for the entire process to be complete.
Yeah. Let me just remove so we can keep interacting with the system and, for example, show the state where each bare metal is, like when we do bare metal node show, node list, and so on.
Hey, thanks for the comment, Dimitri, and glad to have you here. Dimitri is one of the original brains who helped create Bifrost. So happy to have you watching, Dimitri.
So it starts running the playbooks and configuring the machines that we have for now. Here in the other machine, I will start showing a bit on how the inventory looks like for you. This is another setup that I have. So this is how it looks like. It's a JSON, and then you have all the information about the name of the bare metal, the driver that's going to be used, parameters that is for configuration on it, the IP that will be assigned, the NICs information that are necessary to match. These are just virtual bare metals, as I said before. So mostly by default, when you install Bifrost, it will install IPMI driver, Redfish, and there is another one that is manual management, if I recall. And then here in this file, you would have all the information about each hardware that you want to deploy.
So I know that Ironic. I know that Ironic itself directly supports discovery. Are any of those features exposed in Bifrost?
The inspector discovery, you can configure things to happen.
Okay.
It will take a few workarounds. At least I never tested myself, but I know that it's supported. Inspector is running in this machine with Bifrost installed, so you can turn on automated discovery and have your machine, adding a new machine, Ironic will run and gather all the information, and you would be able to automatically make it deploy this new machine that you are adding from your data center and so on.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the stuff we came here already done. What did you do to this NUC before we got here to get it in such a state where it can deploy some nodes for us?
When you have your machine, a fresh machine with CentOS Stream or Ubuntu fresh installed, what do you have to do to get Bifrost? First thing, install Python 3 and Git. And second step, it would be upgrade the package that you have in your machine. After it, what you have to do is just git clone the repository from Bifrost. And then you can just access the Bifrost repo. And if you want to install a specific version like the Z version, your version, you can just when you are into the repo, you can git check out to the stable branch that you would like to use in the installation if you don't want master. And after it, if you are a lazy person, you can just, if you want a virtual environment just to play around and see how things going, that this is what I'm doing here. You can use the Bifrost CLI that we have. And you have to use the test env option. So you run Bifrost CLI test env. So it will prepare our whole virtual testing environment for you. And after this is done, you can go and install Ironic. You have all the things that we have in Bifrost, they are installed in the virtual environment. So if you want to just remove things or upgrade, you have no problems on it. And the next step would be you want to install Ironic to have it running. So you will go and it will have to do is Bifrost CLI install. And here I will show the options that you have. Not sure it's visible, like maybe it's a bit small, not sure.
Yeah, everything's very readable, Iury. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So here we have all the options that you have in the Bifrost CLI install option. You can specify the network interface that you want to use in your lab, in your house, or in a lab in your company, etc. The develop mode, normally it's for us that if we want to test something that it's upstream, not already merged, and we are working on a feature for Iron that we want to test instead of using DevStack, we just want to see how it will work directly in Ironic. We can set up a Bifrost and use the develop mode, and then after Ironic is installed, we can just override things, pushing the changes from Garrett and so on. So we have all the code that we have upstream, it will be used in your machine running Bifrost. You can specify DHCP pool if you want. You can also use the release parameter to specify the release that would like to be installed. The network interface, as I said before, enable Keystone. So Keystone is not running by default. So if you want to use it, you can pass this to your command line and -- enable Keystone. If you want TLS, we also have an option to enable. The hardware types that we'll be using on it, we can specify them. If you want clean disk in erase set, if you want the Prometheus exporter installed in your setup, if you want to use like UEFI or legacy boot for the machines, if you want to disable NDACP, maybe you don't want to have the ACP running because you have an external server that you want to use and configure things. So you can use these options. And here it has the information about all the parameters that you can set and what they would do.
I want to drill into something here because you were talking about how today excuse me, at least as if I heard you correctly, it sounded like you were saying that today Bifrost doesn't integrate with Neutron. So I'm curious what the valid options for network interface would be for an end user today.
Here, the network interface, it's the name of the interface in the machine, like...
Oh, we're talking about physical network interface, not exactly. Ironic network interface. I understand. I'm with you now. That was a little bit confusing to me, so makes sense. All right, well, it looks like things are on the way there.
Yeah, it's already in power on. Wait for callback. It will take like a few more minutes to finish.
So,
and for example, like since you asked how it would look like, let me can you see the documentation now?
Yeah, everything looks great. Your share is working perfect.
Cool. So here is an example. Bifrost CLI install network interface ANO1, and you can specify the DHCP pool that it will be used. And this is like, you have to know how is everything configured in your lab and so on. Iron won't be able to automatically tell you what are the IP address, everything. You have to pass all this information. In this case,
so like looking at this, it almost feels like a common use case. I'm not sure if this is a common use case, but it's certainly one that appears to be emerging from the way it works. It seems like you could almost use Bifrost as a one-time use tool to provision nodes in an environment and then shut it back down. Like it's not necessarily have to be a persistent long-term install of Ironic like it is with other things, right?
Yeah. If you just want like, I'm lazy, I don't want to plug a USB and install everything in this machine, but I have this configuration, and then like maybe you want to do for not only one hardware, because one it would be more easy for you to just plug a USB stick with an ISO and configure everything there, but you have like 10 machines. So if you are going to spend all the time configure each one of them one by one, it will take a lot of time for you. So if you have a spare computer or even your own computer, just install Bifrost, configure everything to have access to your network, specify the address that each machine should get, and you have the ISO that you want to be installed in these machines. You can configure them, pass recommendations, and everything will be deployed like at once. If you create the inventory with all of them, you will just have to run and boom, that's it.
So Dimitri points out in chat here that there's no uninstall that's been implemented yet for Bifrost. So if you're following that kind of pattern, you might want to use a VM or something like that. Or honestly, like with my PTL hat on, when I hear you describe that, there's no reason we shouldn't ship a Docker container. Like you could ship a Docker container, run it in host equals net, and use it to implement this while skipping a lot of the first steps, I believe, right? Something like just a Docker run, Bifrost one-time install, net equals host, share in a folder that has your inventory files in it, and go to town. Like there are definitely ways it seems like that we could make this more accessible for people who don't want to have to dispose a server in the process.
Yeah, and I think there was like some discussions in the past about at least not Bifrost itself. We want to publish our own container image so people would have like it running standalone there. You just configure a few things and boom, you have Iron running in a Docker container.
Yeah, that would be.
At least I remember some discussions in the past related to that. So feel free to ask questions. Probably not.
So just for folks who maybe you're not quite as familiar with Ironic, let's talk about what's happening behind the scenes right now. Do you what driver is your Bifrost using here? Like by default, what install method is it using? It's using a direct install.
So let me show here like the drivers. Driver list. These are the ones that are available. Like if you don't set any option, like the default ones that you have, it's IPMI, manual management, and Redfish. Okay, but we do support where you can specify like ILO, iDRAC, and like I think there's the Lenovo one, XClarity, and many others. Like you can specify them, and Iron will be installed and configured to support these drivers, and you don't have to like go around and searching for all the dependencies to install each one of them and configure. After everything is installed, you can of course like change the configuration file that it will use like most of the default values that we have in Ironic. And if you want to change a few bits on it, just change it and restart the service, and ironically we will keep running with the new configuration that you would like. And then here, let me bare metal node show. Let me grab this one.
Now we're looking at all this stuff, but if you were deploying with Bifrost, you wouldn't need to worry yourself with any of this. We're just looking and seeing what's going on so that we can explain how it's working.
Yeah, so this one it's using, two of them are using IPMI, and you can see all the information about the machine, like secure boot, it's none, storage interface, there's none. It's not retired, the resource class that it's in use, it's the bare metal one. No reservation was used, the rescue interface, it's no rescue. If I recall, IPMI doesn't support it.
No, you can totally do rescue with IPMI.
Okay, and RAID interface, none, but for example, like in your inventory, you can specify the RAID configuration that you would like to have the software RAID and so on. And if the IPA image that you have deployed it's properly configured, it will be able to set up the RAID configuration that you have for this machine. If you want to like create a specific disk image builder image, you can do it. It will Bifrost can installs the disk image builder, so you can use it. And wait, maybe I said that it will install. I don't really remember if it direct install or if there is an option for that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean it's the point is that like with Ironic, all Ironic is really doing with these machines is powering them on, booting a small agent RAM disk, the same agent RAM disk you use for any other Ironic.
Yeah, here
uses that agent to put an image on the disk. So like it's the typical Ironic deployment mechanism. I don't know for certain if Bifrost supports them, but I imagine it would support our kickstart methods as well for deployment. I don't know. Like it might need some massaging to do that.
The quick start one, well, you mean the, trying to remember here, related to the Anaconda driver, or?
Yeah, that's Kickstart, I think, is what it's actually. Well, Kickstart is certainly what we referred to the project downstream, where we were upstreaming that for years. I have no idea what it's called in Ironic proper now.
Okay.
The fun thing about this is you just get access to a lot of what Ironic can do for you here.
Yeah, like here in the instance information, for example, like it tells the image source that it's using, the image type, configuration drive, and image URL. Like normally we show this information because we do it's like a secret. Like you don't want to public everyone seeing all this information.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
we remove them in this part. Here the drive internal info has all the information related to the driver, the steps to deploy. We have all the information like the deploy steps, the priority that it's in use, the type of interface. Here, write image priority 18, no arguments were passed in the interface type deploy. All this information, Ironic is able to, when you kick off to enroll the node, all this information will be passed because these are the default ones that you have set like in the configuration. So it will be passed correctly to the node. Here in the driver info, you have all the information for credentials. The driver in use, IPMI, the deploy interface that is in use, as I said before, it's the direct one.
Okay. So
and mostly it's this what we get all the information that we have here: boot interface, IPXE, and so on.
Yeah, so we've got like we've looked at those. Let's wait for them to finish deploying. The with Bifrost being Ansible, Usually I think of like a project that ships Ansible as being like a building block, right? Is there any use case or ability to use Bifrost as an Ansible module as part of a larger project, or is that not really what it's intended for?
So Bifrost in the end, like we switched or most of them to the OpenStack collection to use.
Okay.
Ansible OpenStack Ansible collection that we have the support for bare metal, and most of the code now in Bifrost is related to that. So if you want to integrate things like the bits you have already in the OpenStack collection, you can use it. But I wouldn't say like to try to retrieve Bifrost to be used directly in another project. At least I wouldn't say that way.
You could almost think of it as like Bifrost is a really good example of how you might use the OpenStack Ansible collection in your own
Yeah.
integration. So like if you wanted to integrate with OpenStack Ironic with your own Ansible, then maybe look at Bifrost for inspiration, but that might not necessarily be your direct starting point. And it seems like that might be a situation where the work on Bifrost, some of that I'm imagining got fed back into the Ansible collection.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's pretty cool. So it sounds like let's try to put like use case walls up around this. Let's talk about like maybe who like this type of Bifrost deploy is good for, who is it not good for. It sounds like this is extremely good for environments that don't have complex networking. How does Bifrost do for like a full life cycle? Like, does it implement the things as I'm sorry, the once these are deployed, will Bifrost support undeploying them and sending them through cleaning, just like with Ironic?
Yes.
So you kind of have a choice. You can run kind of a persistent Ironic to back up Bifrost versus versus one that's more ephemeral. So is there an upgrade path? Like if I was on Bifrost, if I had a cluster that was managed with Bifrost on Yoga, do we provide an upgrade path beyond that?
Yes, we can. Like since it's Ansible, what we have to do, like you have Ironic already running, managing the nodes, and we test in our CI upgrades for Bifrost, like for example from Yoga, and the next would be Z release. What you have to do normally here, you have the Git branch. Here in this one, we are using master, but if you in the beginning you want to install like Yoga as you mentioned, you would have to what you have to do it would be git checkout and stable Yoga, and then when you run Bifrost CLI install, it will install the Yoga version of Ironic. And if you want to upgrade, hey, okay, I don't want this to be Yoga anymore, I want to go to the Z, you can just git checkout disable Z. And if you rerun, since it's Ansible playbooks, what normally Ansible does is if it finds a new version of something that can be upgraded, it will do. And then the playbooks will run a new version of Ironic will be installed with the newer dependencies in the virtual environment. And then you have Ironic in the Z release running in your machine.
Okay.
And there are also like Dimitri, shout outs to Dimitri. He was the responsible to be able to test the upgrade path in Bifrost in our CI. He found a lot of issues and was able to come up with the workarounds in the playbooks when we found them. So the playbooks itself, they have some logic to handle the problems that we found when trying to upgrade from one version to another.
So it's interesting here because Thinking about use cases, it does have some guardrails around like size of the environment, just because I imagine this gets unwieldy at a certain scale.
Mm-hmm.
But the lack of networking support is going to be a hurt. But if we've already put brain power into thinking about integrating with Neutron, that's something where if you're listening to this right now and you go, man, or I would love to use Bifrost if it supported Neutron, that's the sort of thing that you got to tell us. So reach out upstream,
Yeah.
hit the mail-in list, reach out to me directly, someone, and we can get that prioritized, because this is cool stuff. We just in order to get it further, we've got to know what direction people want it to go. But the other thing that I find juicy about this is that many of the customization hooks for Ironic are still in here. You could use Bifrost, for instance, if you're a sophisticated user with a small environment, you could continue to use custom hardware managers with Bifrost and have those run during cleaning. And there's lots of other stuff here that's pretty neat. Does Bifrost use a MariaDB or MySQL server, or is it using our
Yeah.
SQLite based support as well?
It uses MariaDB by default. It's the one that it's installed to have all the information there.
So, right.
I think there is something here. Yeah, here in the architecture docs, it mentions a few of the components that you have that Bifrost is able to install. So Iron Inspector, MariaDB, and GenX, so we can have the ISO and PIX image rendisk and so on, all that to be provided. DNS mask, keystone if you specify the configuration when installing, and Iron Prometheus exporter. It has some specifications about the networking. Since we are using a virtual setup, libvirt, it will use the virb 0. It's the default one that we have, and we have other options that they are available here. One thing related to networking, mostly Bifrost is under IPv4. We have some hard code things and so on, so we don't. Iron fully supports IPv6, but Bifrost doesn't at the moment. So contributions are welcome if you want to help in this effort. And it would be this. Here we mentioned all the log locations, the installation where you can find runtime locations.
But this is like and if you can't answer this, I understand, but like, does Red Hat ship Bifrost in anything currently? Like, can we sort of get an idea of the landscape for what type of operators or what type of like distributions are shipping this right now?
Red Hat doesn't ship Bifrost like as product and so on. But if I recall, in Berlin, I would probably need to double check with Julia and Arn. There was a discussion with operators to understand how they are running and so on, Ironic. And I think some of them mentioned Bifrost they use in production.
So it seems like, honestly, Bifrost has given me really strong Shadow IT vibes here. Of like, I almost feel like the killer use case for this is if you've got a small lab of a couple dozen machines and you want to do something on them real quick, Bifrost is a good way to get there. Or maybe a configure once and leave it. Like if you, let's say like a CDN style use case or any type of use case where you need, point of presences around the world, regardless of what you use on, even if Kubernetes is your endpoint, you could use something like Bifrost to provision up all your machines to get them ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
because even then, I mean, the lifecycle features of Ironic, I love the lifecycle features of Ironic. I mean, one of the architects of cleaning, like that's the part of Ironic that I like. But I know that in reality, for most people, in a in a 5-year lifespan of a server, it might not need that much reprovisioning, especially in some of those point of presence use cases. So just automating the rollout and then having humans manually do stuff for the rest of it is a pretty tempting pattern for that. So this is pretty exciting, and looks like our live demo has defied the laws of live demoing, and we have a couple of active VMs here. So do we want, can you log into one of them? Do you have credentials in them, or is it just test image?
No, like mostly I just set up like them for testing. I never really access them, but I can attempt. Let me see here. Okay, let me double check anything here. I really don't remember what is the default user that it's used here. If it does see her images or not. So let me think here a bit. Yeah, I really don't remember the default user for the image that I'm using. Sorry for that.
Oh no, it's fine. It's we all get very used as Ironic developers of not giving a crap about what's in the image that goes on the test machine.
Yeah, that's true.
If the bits get written to the disk, we're done. Okay, we're not the image folks. We're not the ones who make the images. We don't manage the OSs. We put bits on the disk that we're given and we're done. So it's not a big deal.
That's totally true.
Yeah, it is. But this has been pretty fun to see the demo here. Like, I know that Bifrost is in active development, but I haven't seen much come across in terms of major features that we're aiming for anytime this cycle. Do we have anything in mind for like might be what's next for Bifrost? And if the answer is, we don't have a next, that's an okay answer for now too.
Yeah, for now at least that I would remember, nothing comes to mind. But it would be like really awesome to see if we are able to add support for Neutron. Like if some people have some time to spend on it, and if you, of course, like your company supports you contributing to open source, and if this is something that you think would be cool, come to us. Like we are able to provide some help. Tell you the steps where you can follow, and we'll be happy to review and see this happen in the future. Neutron support, IPv6 would be something also.
And let's be clear, like contribution to this effort doesn't have to be code. It doesn't have to be a large amount of time. Even coming upstream, like I said, you can reach out to I think me or Iury on socials. I don't think you'd mind that either. We're on IRC and hashtag OpenStack-ironic on OFTC and the associated matrix bridges. Quite frankly, if you see a JAYF in IRC anywhere, there's a high chance that it's me. So, that can be part of it. Just reach out, tell us you're using it, tell us what your use case is. If you have problems, report them. If you found a new trick, share it. Like contribution is not just code in this case. This is a tool that sort of is, we know that there are going to be systems folks using this who may not necessarily feel comfortable with contributions to open source.
Yeah.
So don't let that feel like a high bar to you. Come talk to us. That sort of is a nice thing for us. Even if you don't feel like you're giving anything back, if you come and say, "Hey, I used your software. X, Y, and Z was great, but this could use a little bit of work," that's going to make our day. Quite frankly, we don't get as many of those interactions because the folks who use software like Ironic and OpenStack often tends to be more likely to be ringing the bell at the stock exchanges than they are talking to us in IRC. So.
If you attempt to use Bifrost, like even following the documentation, and there is something that the step that you are following, it's giving you an error and you have no idea, reach out to us and we will do all we can like to help if we understand the issue that you're having and so on.
So I know that I'm going to take a little bit of homework for this home. I'm going to see if this is actually as easy as Iury made it out to be, and and try to reproduce all this that I can show some other folks. If that's sort of my hope. One of my takeaways is there anything you'd kind of like to share maybe before we shift away from this? Like, is there anything else about Bifrost that we need to talk about that we haven't talked about yet? That's maybe something cool you've done with it or that you've seen change over time.
Like for me, the cool thing that I saw like in Bifrost, that was something that I did. It was enabling the Prometheus exporter on it. Like, so if you have a Prometheus server, you want to gather metrics from the hardware that you have and expose to Prometheus. We have the Iron Prometheus exporter under the Iron umbrella that it's able to receive the sensor data from Ironic and pass all that information in metrics that you can make available directly to Prometheus.
So it's actually exciting because the Prometheus exporter right now in the current Z release of Ironic is only exporting hardware metrics.
Yeah.
But Ironic for a long time has supported sending application metrics, but via StatsD, which that should tell you when that was added to Ironic, since StatsD's fallen quite a bit out of favor. But one of the nice things we've got coming down the pipe for Antelope is we're actually going to have conductors start exporting those application metrics via Prometheus as well. So that'll be pretty neat, where you'll be able to find out not just about your hardware, but about your provisioning setup. We don't quite have it. We're going to be able to get those metrics from the APIs yet, just because it's a little bit more of a technically difficult problem, given that an API process might be running as in a WSGI server, which makes all that a little more difficult. But we're going to support exporting them from Conductor, which quite frankly, Conductor is where all the magic happens anyway. API servers and Ironic more or less just take your request and toss it on an RPC bus to conductors anyway. So they're rarely super busy. It's usually the conductors. But do you have anything you want to plug, Iury? Like, do you want to tell people what your socials are, or like say a nice thing about your employer or another open source project you're working on? Anything like that before we get going?
So mostly like I'm available on IRC, on OFTC network, mostly all the OpenStack channels, because like I've been contributing to OpenStack since 2014, if I recall correctly. So it's quite some time. And Mostly, I've been working directly with Ironic in the past 4 years, and it's been a good journey so far. The community is awesome. Thanks, everyone. Uh, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions, and we'll see what we can do for you and help out.
Yeah, with sort of an upstream hat on, I will say that the virtual PTG is coming up in March for Ironic contributors and OpenStack contributors really across the globe to get together and to determine what we're going to be working on for the Bobcat release, the second release of 2023. And so if you're out there and you've got an Ironic feature request, you've got a use case, anything like that, getting it to us now is the best way to ensure that it gets considered to be worked on in the next 6 months. We don't have a lot of hands, so we try really hard to make sure we plan out what we're working on and pick the things that are the highest impact. But if you're here listening to it and you've got ideas, you're that person we want to impact too. So please do reach out to us, talk to us about that. I'll plug this for me personally. I'll be at Scale 20X in Pasadena, California. Me and my friend Julia Gregory will be presenting on the death of hardware knowledge, which is going to be lots of fun, sort of looking back on how we built up layers between our workloads and the hardwares they run on throughout the years and how that sort of affects the way we think about things. I'm really excited about that. And as always, thanks to G Research for letting me be a part of this, running these couple times a week. Thanks, Iury, for joining me here. This was actually really great. I had no idea that Bifrost was as cool as it was, despite the fact I've worked on Ironic for a while. I've not really focused that much on things like Bifrost. So I appreciate your time and thank you all for listening.
Thanks for the invitation.
What was? Oh yeah, thanks.